Welcome in, everybody. It is Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm David Wilson. That is Calvin White. Looking forward to be joining you guys for the next 2 hours as we take it from preps to pros here on Main Street Sports Today. Got a good show for you guys. We'll continue our SEC football previews as we go around the Southeastern Conference. We'll talk a little Auburn football today here in the next segment. It's 2:20. The voice of the Auburn Tigers, Andy BURCHAM, kind enough to join us as we dive into Hugh Freeze and what the Tigers have got cooking up as they prepare for their season opener against Baylor next week. We'll also have our weekly NASCAR segment at 3:20 in the second hour with Heather Williams. Hopefully Calvin has brushed up on his NASCAR and is ready to go. The playoff kick is almost underway in NASCAR's Premier Division. The regular season finale is this weekend at Daytona Beach. We'll talk about that. The new NASCAR schedule, which includes dates at Nashville Superspeedway. We'll discuss that as well with Heather. And obviously, we'll talk about Austin Dillon's big win for RCR at Richmond last weekend to punch his ticket to the NASCAR playoffs. We'll also have a little baseball chatter at 3 o'clock this day in Braves history. We'll also get into the grab bag. So a full show for you guys. Looking forward to getting to it. Calvin, this is probably the end of the quote-unquote Main Street Today work week for you. How was yesterday's show? And I know you're excited in a couple nights to have some high school football play on your plate as well.
Yeah, yesterday's show with Wade is good as always. Ship still sailing pretty smoothly with our reoccurring appearances on Main Street Sports Today. But yeah, I've been to 2 volleyball games this week. Going to try and get out to soccer tomorrow, and then the fall season really kicks off on Friday when we get together for our weekly high school football coverage.
Right. It's been a busy week, as you mentioned already, for our Main Street Sports family. Monday had coverage of the Wilson County Cup for golf. Also, I guess I was on Blaine Keller duty as he's on vacation and doing adult things. Covered the TLSA Border Control meeting, which turned out to be a big one. If you haven't heard yet, the TLSA has reshaped its volleyball postseason format, going away from a modified double elimination tournament to a single elimination with a consolation bracket style. So there will be a first, second place, and third place now moving forward for volleyball for the foreseeable future. So feel free to read that on our Main Street Preps newspaper, wherever you get that. Really good stuff there. As Calvin mentioned, feel free to read his piece on East Robertson volleyball and Clarksville volleyball as well. So Calvin does a great job there, not only in Montgomery County, but Robertson County as well. You are going to White House and Greenbrier on Friday night. That is correct?
Yes, White House Heritage and Greenbrier football.
That's right. And you guys can find me tomorrow night. It'll start early for me. I'll be on the sidelines up at Green Hill as they host the Beach Bucks on the MyTV Friday Night Rivals Game of the Week on a Thursday edition. And then on Friday night, I'll be making the trip also out to Lebanon to see Friendship Christian host Trousdale County. So it should be a full week of high school football on the plate this weekend. Not looking forward to staying up till 2 a.m. in the mornings, writing and typing out these stories. But I guess it's that part of the year. So Calvin, like I said, a good show coming up today. Let's get into yesterday's results and today's schedule on the rundown.
This is the Rundown.
Last night's scores across Major League Baseball. Wade's Astros fell in extra innings to the Detroit Tigers 1-0. We'll get into that one a little later, but the Astros have been shut out for the last 28 innings. They have not scored since August the 16th. It's August 20th. So got to get the bats going for the Stros. Down in Atlanta, the Braves come back from a 6-run deficit and defeat the White Sox 11-10 and even up that 3-game set. Michael Harris and Jerickson Profar are both homer in that matchup for the Bravos. Harris continues to stay hot down there. Down at First Horizon Park, a little history was made. We'll get into that later in our MLB chatter segment. The Sounds open up their homestand against the Louisville Bats, and they defeat the affiliate of the Cincinnati Reds 7-3. Raynel Delgado hit for the cycle for the Sounds, and Rick Sweet earned the win as manager for the Sounds, moved into third place all-time in MILB history on that wins list. So congrats to Rick and Raynel as the Sounds get a nice start to their 6-game series against the Bats. In the W, we had a lot of games going on last night. The New York Liberty defeated the Minnesota Lynx 85-75. The Connecticut Sun toppled the Washington Mystics 80-69. Seattle Storm defeated the Chicago Sky 94-88. The Las Vegas Aces defeated the Atlanta Dream 74-72. The Aces have been rolling of late. They are winners of 8 in a row. And in the nightcap, the Phoenix Sun defeated the Golden State Valkyries 98-92. That's last night's scores across the W.
Looking at tonight's schedule in Major League Baseball, the Astros are at the Tigers. That game is currently underway on MLB Network. The White Sox are at the Braves tonight. You can catch first pitch for that game at 6:15 p.m. on FanDuel Sports Southeast. Minor League Baseball, the Louisville Bats are at the Sounds at 6:35 p.m. First pitch for that one. And the lone WNBA game of the night, the Dallas Wings are at the Los Angeles Sparks at 9 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, those were your scores. That was your schedule, and that concludes today's rundown.
I will say before we get into our top story, Calvin's getting really smooth with that read at the end of the rundown. Really smooth. I like it. Our top story is brought to you by the fine folks down at Piggly Wiggly in Neely's Mill in Columbia. They serve lunch daily from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. They also offer hand-cut meats, and everything is cost plus 10 at the cash register. Piggly Wiggly, Neely's Mill in Columbia. Presenting to you our top story, and I'm going to give credit to Calvin for this one. He dug into the web and found this story. The WNBA, obviously having a great season. It's really been resurging the last couple of years with the input of stars at its level. Caitlin Clark, Cameron Brink, the list goes on and on. Sophie Cunningham. They have already, with 65 games left in their season overall and several weeks to play before we reach the postseason, have broken their attendance record. This comes from Front Office Sports and Bleacher Report as well. The WNBA, set a new regular season attendance on Friday. 2.43 million people have already sat in WNBA arenas, breaks the previous record of 2.364 million from 2002. The Indiana Fever with Caitlin Clark, former Iowa Star, they lead the attendance in the WNBA, drawing over 30,000 fans at the team's 18 home games this season. Although Caitlin has only appeared in 8 of those games, being limited to injury, obviously that number has skyrocketed with her popularity and with the Fever obviously being in contention to make the postseason this year and hosting home playoff games. Just imagine what that number is going to be in the postseason, Calvin. But we've talked about it, kind of on the show with Mo and, even you and I, Calvin, the resurgence of women's basketball, right? With the stars that we see. Obviously, Caitlin Clark, her rise at Iowa was very much noted. And, it's continued in the WNBA. And, you think about the stars at the college level now, Juju Watkins out at USC, Flau'jae Johnson, etc. It's only the rise of women's basketball is only going to continue to go moving forward.
Yeah, it's really cool to see the massive growth in women's basketball over the last couple of years. Kind of started at the college level with Dawn Staley in South Carolina and UCLA women's basketball, just kind of, dominating the sport for the last couple of years, along with Gino Auriemma and UConn. And then we really saw the WNBA take off to a new level with that draft class with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, Cameron Brink, Camila Cardoso, players like that. Women's basketball is kind of it's been very underrated for a long time. People just think just because they're not running and dunking everywhere that it's not an enjoyable product. And the Golden State Valkyries have kind of been a huge part of that attendance boost. They've sold out all 16 home games at the Chase Center out there. So expansion, the Aces have been really good the last couple of years with A'ja Wilson, who's probably the best player in the WNBA. So it's just been really cool to see over the last couple of years, college and professional women's basketball kind of get the attention that it deserves.
Yeah, good point by you, Calvin, mentioning the expansion team, the Golden State Valkyries. You mentioned they sold out all 16 of their games at the Chase Center this season. That's 289,024 attendees. Also want to give credit, obviously, to the New York Liberty, who also have drive up the attendance. They are averaging 29% more fans this year, already having 25,000 fans despite playing 3 games so far. Some numbers here. The WNBA is averaging more than 11,000 fans per game this year. That would also shatter a record if the season ended today. See, there's still a whole month left to play. But Calvin, you made a good point. The rise of women's basketball. I mean, I remember just a few years ago that these WNBA teams were in lesser venues, if that sense. They were not playing in the same arenas per se as the NBA teams. We've seen with the rise of the Indiana Fever where teams have had to move to bigger arenas to accommodate them, for instance. So I guess that's important. And also, it feels like now more than ever, Calvin, you turn on the TV on ESPN or ABC or no matter the network, a WNBA game is on. I remember this past Sunday, the Aces were on. You click on and watch the Aces, and you can watch and enjoy women's basketball. It seems like that opportunity to just watch, not only in person, but on the TV screens, is something that's growing prevalent now, which is good for the sport.
Yeah, and it also seems like, more teams than not in the league have a very identifiable superstar or even multiple. The Fever have Caitlin Clark. The Aces have Asia Wilson. The New York Liberty have Sabrina Ionescu and Brianna Stewart. We saw all those people or all those women dominate the college game as well. So, with that growth of women's college basketball, we've kind of been able to watch these women's basketball players ever since they were freshmen in college and, turned into budding superstars in the WNBA. Kelsey Plum, now at the Sparks, broke the women's college basketball all-time scoring record a couple years ago when she was at Washington. So I feel like the star power is a lot more noticeable now in the WNBA than it probably ever has been.
Yeah, good point by you there. So congrats to the W as they continue to make records, not only on TV as well with their popularity, but also in their in-season attendance as well. Looking forward to seeing what that looks like, obviously, in the postseason. Hopefully these stars can get healthy. But, with Caitlin Clark, hopefully coming back and being full-fledged and ready to go for the postseason with her popularity, with obviously the Aces coming on here strong, obviously Minnesota and New York, 2 teams that can vie for a title as well. That popularity should make a very much for an entertaining postseason here in September as we kind of wind down the stretch of the WNBA season. Looking forward to having a good show here on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedics Alliance of Columbia. As we mentioned, coming up in that second hour, we'll dive into our weekly visit with Heather Williams as we talk all things NASCAR. Looking forward to talking to her specifically about some things on the NASCAR schedule that got released today. Obviously, the news here in Nashville is that the annual triple header weekend is returning to Nashville Super Speedway at the end of May next year, May 29th through the 31st, as the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, the newly named O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and the NASCAR Cup Series, its premier division, tangle around the concrete banks of Nashville Super Speedway. But coming up after this break, we're looking forward to being joined by the voice of the Auburn Tigers, Andy BURCHAM, as we dive into our SEC preview, continue that moving forward, and we'll talk a little Auburn Tigers as they look to regain bowl eligibility. We'll see with Andy, is Hugh Freeze on the hot seat? So all that and more coming up here on Main Street Sports today. So stick with us.
closer. All new Sportsbook, the latest gaming machines, live horse racing, and more. The Mid Gaming Hall, Kentucky Downs. When it just got closer.
Deep in a forest at Nashville Zoo, new creatures here for you to view. Phantoms graced in black and white swing high in trees of dappled light. In rocky crags, tall and steep, small antelopes with nimble feet. A wise old man with beard of white, a sentry perched on stony height. Amidst it all, a hunter lies, with coat of gold and steely eyes. A new adventure just for you. Leopard Forest at Nashville Zoo. Open now.
Busy bee, yeah, busy bee. If you need
Hold on, y'all, hold on. I need to make a call. Hey, this is Brianna with Busy Bee. I'm giving you a call to let you know your technician is on his way.
833.
Busy bee. Guys, not yet. Not yet.
Busy bee, oh,
Now
busy
ready,
bee.
guys.
Call 775-7833.
Custom Stone Handlers supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with Riverstone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe the measure of any person or company is how you treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStoneHandlers.com.
Welcome back in to Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports. Today, I'm David Wilson. That is Calvin White. Looking forward to continuing our SEC football previews here with Andy BURCHAM, the voice of the Auburn Tigers here, just waiting on him for just a second. Calvin, you guys continued the SEC previews yesterday with Wade, talking a little LSU, Garrett Nussmeier, Brian Kelly. Kind of give me really quickly as we wait on Andy what you learned about the Bayou Bengals yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, going into the offseason, the biggest thing that LSU needed to address was the offensive line and that defense. Their defense finished, I believe, second to last in total defense in the SEC last year to Mississippi State, who gave up 35 points a game. So LSU wasn't far behind them in terms of the worst defenses in the SEC. Garrett Nussmeier, he's tied for second, I believe, in preseason Heisman odds. So he's going to try to bring a little bit of that quarterback stability back to LSU after the past couple of years with Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels and players like that to kind of get that offense back up to what it was. And, ever since Brian Kelly was hired there, they've won at least 9 games all 3 years he's been there, but they've never made the college football playoff. And the expectation is always high at LSU to contend for that conference championship, make the college football playoff, and contend for a national championship.
You mentioned that the expectations when you are taking over a program like LSU, you have all the resources and talent in the world. And it seems like when they match up with Clemson next week, you have kind of a mirroring programs in the sense of both of those teams, whether it's with Dabo and Clemson or Brian Kelly at LSU, have struggled to get off to good starts the last couple of years. I mean, LSU just a couple of years ago lost to Florida State in its season opener on a missed extra point, I believe. So LSU and Clemson, somebody's going to walk out of Atlanta, I believe, next week with a win. That's going to be very monstrous towards their resume, towards hopefully making the college football playoff. Obviously, with Kate Klubnik, Clemson is very much a contender, and you mentioned as well with Garrett Nussmeier, probably, pound for pound, one of the most talented quarterbacks in the college football landscape, regardless of conference and affiliation, looking to lead that LSU offense. But you mentioned last year their defense was very porous at times. So it seems like every one of these we've done, Calvin, whether we were talking about Arkansas with Sam Pittman, we're going to talk today with Andy about Hugh Freeze at Auburn. Brian Kelly is somewhat, in my mind, on the hot seat at LSU. Definitely when you consider the job that he left at Notre Dame and how Marcus Freeman has done with the Fighting Irish. So if this is not the year for LSU with the quarterback position, Brian Kelly is going to have some questions to answer to probably keep his job there down in the Bayou.
Yeah, and that game with LSU to open the season is hopefully going to be a good game. If LSU happens to drop that one, they play Louisiana Tech week 2, and then I can't remember if it was a home game or if it's on the road, but they play Florida week 3. So I would assume that in LSU fans' minds, if you get off to a 1-2 start, you lose to Clemson and Florida the first 2 out of the first 3 games of the year. I wouldn't say you're in panic mode, but losing to Clemson and Florida aren't going to exactly make or break your season. But in terms of where LSU and their fan base expects to be, someone might be pulling the fire alarm on the Tigers a little early if they happen to start 1-2.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that Florida game. Mo and I talked with our Florida insider last Thursday, and with DJ Lagway being kind of iffy, questionable throughout camp, battling a shoulder injury, and that LSU game that is at home for LSU. So I imagine the fire alarm would be pulled per se. You can't lose that game at home against a Florida program that's I guess kind of picked that middle tier along with LSU in a sense of trying to compete in the SEC. But that's a game that you have to win at home in Death Valley. So um, hopefully DJ Lagway can be healthy in that matchup and we can get a Nussmeier versus Lagway. I'm really looking forward to that. Also looking forward to the LSU and Clemson game next week. But we're going to talk a little Auburn here as we wait on Andy Bertram, the voice of the Auburn Tigers, to join us. And kind of preview for me, just kind of your thoughts on Auburn this year, Calvin, and what you kind of are expecting. And, I guess looking forward to asking Andy about the Tigers as well.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see or hear Andy's thoughts on their quarterback play this year. The past couple of years, they haven't had great quarterback play ever since Bo Nix transferred out of there to go play at Oregon. They've had a really rough stretch here lately in the Iron Bowl against Alabama. They had that game won, I believe, a year or two ago. They were up late, and then Isaiah Bond caught the touchdown in the back of the end zone for Alabama to steal the Iron Bowl for Alabama. But we got used to Auburn being at or near the top of the SEC for so long. When we talk about guys like Cam Newton and Bo Nix was really good when he was there. We got used to Auburn being at the top of the SEC for so long. It kind of feels a little weird to see them where they've been at the last couple of years. And Hugh Freeze has been a good football coach wherever he's been, everywhere but Auburn. And the SEC has been loaded the last couple of years with Georgia winning national championships and Alabama still being really good under Nick Saban, going into Kalen DeBoer last year. LSU's been really good. So it'll just be interesting to see Andy's overall thoughts, but I'd like to especially find out what he thinks about the quarterback play.
Yeah, it feels like and this is an understatement, a vital third year for Hugh Freeze. Obviously, at Ole Miss, he won the big game when he needed to. I think about it with Giles County, Tennessee native Bo Wallace leading that Ole Miss team over a big win versus Alabama at Ole Miss. Them storming the field on CBS. That's kind of a image that I remember of growing up, right? Ole Miss was able to win the big game, and it seems like coming over from Liberty, obviously with Hugh Freeze taking over for Brian Harsin, who's never truly, in my mind, fit there. He just kind of was not what the expectations was for that Auburn program. The expectation was that Hugh Freeze was going to vault them into the category. I mean, Auburn is such a hit or miss program in the sense of when they are good, they are a premier team in college football capable of winning a national championship. I mean, they have all the resources to do it. But, when they're at their worst, I mean, they really struggled. And I mean, this is a program that, last year lost to Vanderbilt at home. Now, granted, it was a better Vanderbilt team, but it's either there's a lot of highs per se, and there's a lot of lows when it comes to Auburn football.
Yeah, finished third to last in the SEC last year, only in front of Kentucky and Mississippi State. And even when we talk about Mississippi State was so good for a long time under Dan Mullen when Dak Prescott was there. It's not exactly the same thing, but we got used to Mississippi State being at the top so long. I never thought I would see a time in my lifetime when Auburn and Kentucky football were mentioned in the same sentence in terms of how bad they are at football. Um, but like I said a minute ago, it just feels weird to see Auburn be as bad as they are last year and just be so uncompetitive in so many games. So I do think it's a make or break year for Hugh Freeze. Those Auburn fans down there are very impatient, especially when they got used to winning for so long and being so good and being competitive in games like the Iron Bowl and trying to make the college football playoff and contend for SEC championships.
Yeah, you mentioned the quarterback play last year kind of being porous. Obviously, Peyton Thorne was a guy that saw the bulk of the work for them. I think about the running back position. Jacquez Hunter averaged over 6 yards per carry for that Auburn offense. So they were able to have some success running the football. But as you mentioned, the quarterback play is what they lacked in consistency. You mentioned looking forward to talking to Andy as he's battling some connection issues here. Hopefully he'll join us here very shortly. About the quarterback position, you got 3 guys that are been told kind of with, Hugh Freeze going to the media on Monday saying that they have the opportunity to play in the season opener versus Baylor. Obviously, one of those is Oklahoma transfer Jackson Arnold, who moves over from the SEC from Boomer Sooner, per se, to War Eagle. You have, much coveted prospect who's a freshman, Deuce Knight. Obviously, he's a name familiar to those of us here in the Mid-State. Spent part of his high school career very briefly here at Lipscomb Academy here in Nashville. Obviously, he's a former Notre Dame commit, so he's a very sought-after player as well. So, there are guys, and also there's Ashton Daniels. So, when you have 3 quarterbacks, the old saying is you really have no quarterbacks, but at least for your Hugh Freeze here, you have guys that have talent, right? Like Jackson Arnold has flashed, right? He's shown the ability that he can make plays at the SEC level. The question is he can make them consistently. Obviously, there's ups and downs when it comes to having a true freshman come in and start from you right away. Deuce Knight has all the ability in the world. He's a lefty thrower that has mobility. Obviously, a distinguished career coming out of George County, Mississippi. So, Calvin, I guess the question is obviously Baylor has kind of taken a step back the last couple of years. I guess that they do give you kind of the opportunity to see what your quarterbacks have.
Yeah, Baylor's been one of those teams that has kind of been floating around the middle or the bottom of the Big 12 for the last couple of years, but producer Mark tells me that we have Andy BURCHAM on deck. So
He's
Mark,
ready to go.
He's ready to go. Mark, if you want to bring him on in, we are now joined by Andy BURCHAM, the voice of the Auburn Tigers. Andy, I think you'd be kind of impressed at the just the off-the-cuff stuff me and David have been rattling off about Auburn football, trying to get you in here. But
sorry about that.
You're good. We are excited to be joined by you. But, kind of just jumping right into it, me and David have kind of been rambling back and forth about Auburn for the last couple of minutes. But, season opener next week against Baylor. Just kind of what are your overall expectations for Auburn going into this 2025 season against Baylor?
Yeah, it's hard for me not to get excited about this Auburn team. I believe that this team is as talented as Auburn has had in quite some time, but it has to produce. I thought Auburn was going to take a step forward going into last season. Hugh Freeze's second season at Auburn. And the Tigers had narrow losses to Cal and Oklahoma and Arkansas and Missouri and Vanderbilt. 2 or 3 of those go the other way, and I think the Auburn family's thoughts about this season are much different than they are. There is a sense of urgency on the Plains, no question about that. And Auburn gets a very tough opener at Baylor on the 29th. It's Auburn's first true road game to open a season since the Tigers opened the year at USC in 2002. Auburn has played some neutral site games in Arlington and a couple in Atlanta to open a season, but have not played on the road at an opponent's home field since the Trojans and the Tigers in 2002. And Auburn will get supremely tested, I believe, by this Baylor ball club on the 29th.
And you kind of mentioned that sense of urgency. In 2 years of Auburn football under Hugh Freeze, never won or haven't won more than 6 games yet. There's no easy schedule in the SEC for anybody. Everybody got used to Georgia storming through the league and winning national championships the last couple of years. Alabama is obviously still really good. But, people got used to Auburn being so good for so long and being at the top of the SEC. Do you think that this is a make or break year for Hugh Freeze in terms of his job security?
I don't think so. I know that there are some that will disagree with me, but I don't believe from Auburn's administration standpoint it is. I think there is a sense of urgency, however, with Coach Freeze, this staff, and this team, and the administration for that matter, at Auburn. It's time for this team to take that step forward. He has 2 really good recruiting classes now under his belt here at Auburn, and a very, very good group, especially of freshmen, sophomores, juniors. And now it's time for these guys to take a step forward and win those games, win those close games that Auburn did not win a year ago.
David, say hi to
Andy, obviously,
Hi, David.
I guess the news and the yeah, I'm here. Andy, obviously, there's going to be a lot of news around the quarterback position when it comes to college football and the SEC. I mean, we've seen quarterback competitions across the country. Notre Dame just named theirs with C.J. Carr over Kenny Minchey. Auburn's got a competition, and Hugh Freeze is kind of yet to decide a winner in that. He said on his radio show on Monday that all 3 guys that are quote unquote in the race could see playing time against Baylor. Obviously, that's Oklahoma transfer Jackson Arnold, Stanford transfer Ashton Daniels, and much coveted prospect Deuce Knight, who spent some time here locally at the high school level here in Nashville. Kind of give me your thoughts on that quarterback competition and maybe what each of those guys could present that could be appealing as the next captain and leader of that Auburn offense.
Well, the guy this QB1 is Jackson Arnold. He is the number 1 quarterback at Auburn. That competition is over going into this game. And yes, Auburn feels good about its quarterback room. I think Auburn feels that it has more depth in the quarterback room than it has had in years past. But there's no question Jackson Arnold is the starter and is the starter for this season. Coach Freeze was responding to the depth that he has at quarterback. And you mentioned Deuce Knight, outstanding freshman out of Bluesdale, Mississippi. One of Auburn's best recruits at quarterback in quite some time. 6'4", 217 pounds with speed, an arm. He can make all the throws that he needs to. He has all the weapons to develop into an outstanding quarterback at Auburn, and has been on campus since January, along with Jackson. And Auburn feels good about Ashton Daniels as well. Ashton Daniels did not come in the spring because he was at Stanford finishing his degree. So he comes in as a college graduate after a really good career with the Cardinal. But he comes in and he gives Auburn a weapon in a guy that's been there and done that on the West Coast. And I think Auburn feels very good about its depth. But guys, clearly there is no competition right now as the starting quarterback. It's Jackson Arnold moving forward. He's going to be the one taking the snaps in the Baylor game. Now, Hugh Freeze has said that he feels with the talent that he has with Ashton Daniels and Deuce Knight, they could play. Could is the primary word there, not would. And he certainly wasn't talking about rotating guys in and out. I think that was taken out of context a little bit. I just think he feels good about that quarterback room, but there's no question who QB1 is. It's the transfer from Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold.
Andy, in watching the game last year against Vanderbilt briefly and just really kind of Auburn games sporadically throughout the year, someone who really impressed me, obviously a guy taken in the 4th round by the Los Angeles Rams, that was running back Jarquez Hunter. He's a bowling ball, an absolute nightmare for defenders to tackle, average over 6 yards per carry. Obviously, there's going to be some shoes to fill in that Auburn run game. Kind of talk to me about the pieces around Jackson Arnold on that offense that kind of get the folks excited down there on the plains.
Yeah, it's one of the interesting aspects about this time or about this team, because in years past, Auburn's always had that running back that was going to get the most carries. We knew that going in. It was Jarquez Hunter. Before that, Tank Bigsby. Both of these guys are in the NFL now. I believe that the guy that will get the most carries initially is Damari Alston, who has the most experience of Auburn's tailbacks. And then it's Jeremiah Cobb. Darrell Robinson, who transferred in from UConn, has fought some injuries to get ready for the Baylor game. And then one of the interesting stories about this team in the fall camp is Omar Mabson the second. Omar is from Auburn, Alabama. his age, he could be a senior at Auburn High School this year, but graduated from Auburn High School a year and a half early and declared a year and a half early. He has been on campus since the spring. And when both Damari and Jeremiah had some nagging injuries, and both are healthy now, by the way, but when those guys had some nagging injuries early in fall camp, Omar Mabson was given an opportunity and shined. And that's been one of the interesting stories, because this was a guy, as mentioned, that's young enough to be in high school right now. And I think a lot of us thought, well, they'll give him a year to develop. But boy, he has stepped forward. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't get some carries early in this season. But that's the four. That's the four right now. But I think Damari Alston, Jeremiah Cobb, Darrell Robinson, Omar Mabson are the four guys. Who becomes that guy? Who becomes the next Tank Bigsby, the next Jarquez Hunter? That remains to be seen at this point.
Andy, you mentioned that you thought this was going to be Hugh Freeze's most talented team at Auburn. I remember a lot of talk throughout the summer where people were saying, Hugh Freeze, wasn't in the portal and recruiting as hard as he might have could been. But, even despite that, what is it that makes you think that this is going to be the most talented Auburn team under Hugh Freeze?
Well, the talk that came out early this summer was about the 26 class. It wasn't about this year's team. He had those guys already in camp. Most had gone through spring ball. So let's make that distinction. I think one of the big differences for Auburn in a positive role is Auburn's offensive line. And Auburn has two transfer tackles that will start unless something happens between now and the Baylor game on the 29th. And Mason Murphy, who transferred in from USC at right tackle, and Xavier Chaplin at left tackle, who transferred in from Virginia Tech. You can add Tutal Miller, who has been a starter for Auburn the last couple years, has played both guard and tackle. They're looking a little bit at him at guard right now. And then the middle three are the veterans, at least in an Auburn uniform, with Connor Lew at center and Jeremiah Wright at right guard and Dylan Wade at left guard. And Dylan Wade was a guy that has played tackle, guard, and is even working as the backup center right now. So he's the Swiss Army knife, so to speak, on that offensive line, including Tutal Miller, and then Murphy, Wright, Lew, Wade, and Chaplin. All of those guys are already on NFL draft boards at this point. We haven't said that about Auburn's offensive line in quite some time. So that's why I say that there is more talent on the Plains, and it starts up front for Auburn offensively. We know how talented the wide receiver room is right now, and Auburn has added Eric Singleton Jr., transfer from Georgia Tech, who gives Auburn great speed, a return guy, and some veteran presence, with a wide receiver class that is dominated by an outstanding sophomore class of Perry Thompson and Malcolm Simmons, Bryce Gain, and, of course, Cam Coleman. Auburn loves that wide receiver room. That may be Auburn's most talented wide receiver room in decades on the Plains. So there's another reason. Auburn feels that it is better at quarterback this season with Jackson Arnold. That, of course, remains to be seen before Auburn gets ready for that Baylor game. So that takes a look at your offense. Auburn returns Alex McPherson back at place kicker. And if you want to know how important a place kicker is that has missed 2 field goals in his Auburn career, look back at some ball games that Auburn lost a year ago where a field goal here or there is the difference in Auburn winning a game. And I think Auburn has some depth there, and getting him back from his health troubles a year ago is very, very important for Auburn. If there's a question for Auburn defensively, it's up the middle. Defensive tackle, nose tackle, and then at the linebacker spot. Auburn has depth. Auburn has players and talent. It is unproven at this point. And Auburn will get a very big test when they face that Baylor offense on the 29th.
Kind of looking at their schedule, obviously we've talked about it. They open at Baylor, Ball State, South Alabama at home, travel to Oklahoma and Texas A&M. Then they get Georgia and Missouri at home, Arkansas and Kentucky, and Vanderbilt on the road, Mercer at home, and then the Iron Bowl at home to close out the year. We mentioned it earlier, there's no easy schedules in the SEC, but just kind of what are your overall thoughts on the schedule, and, over under how many wins you think Auburn can pick up this year?
Yeah, I'm not going to give you a number. I don't give anyone a number, so I'll let you know that right now. I will say this. I think this Baylor game is very important for Auburn for a number of reasons. It is the opener. I think it's important for Auburn for momentum. I think it's important for Auburn for confidence before it comes home for 2 non-conference games against Ball State and South Alabama. And then, as you mentioned, the gauntlet of the Southeastern Conference is upon Auburn. Back-to-back road games at Oklahoma and Texas A&M, and both are expected to be better than they were a year ago. An off date before Auburn is home to Georgia in what could be an enormous game on a national stage. And then, Auburn doesn't have a non-SEC game until the preview to the Iron Bowl in November. So it is a very tough schedule for this Auburn team. And a lot of these teams that Auburn is facing this year, it lost to a year ago. And a couple of those games were at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Well, 3 of those games were at Jordan-Hare Stadium in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Vanderbilt. And now Auburn goes to all 3 of those places. So the schedule is very, very tough. But I think getting momentum early in this season before it goes on the road for 2 games and it is home against Georgia is paramount for this Auburn team, I think, to take a step forward.
Andy, you mentioned it's probably going to be a packed house on October 11th when Auburn hosts Georgia, not only because of the South's oldest rivalry per se, but it's going to be the retirement of Cam Newton's jersey that was announced earlier this week by Auburn. Just kind of talk to me about what that environment's going to be like, obviously, for Cam, who not only won a Heisman Trophy with Auburn in 2010, but led him to a national championship, one of the most talented signal callers, obviously, not only in Auburn history, but SEC history as well.
It's one of the great single seasons, I think, in college football history. He did everything he could do in his 1 year at Auburn. He won the Heisman Trophy, was the SEC Player of the Year, led Auburn to an SEC championship, led Auburn to an undefeated season, and it capped off with that championship win against Oregon out in Glendale, Arizona. I mean, he couldn't have done more for that Auburn team in 2010 and wrapped up in early 2011. It has been 15 years now since Cam Newton played his 1 season at Auburn, a special season, a championship season at Auburn. Went on to a terrific career in the NFL and was an NFL MVP and led Carolina into the Super Bowl. And is someone that is not a stranger to Auburn as well. We still see Cam coming back for games, and he's very involved on this campus. So I love the fact that Auburn is doing this. He joins an elite crew of those who have had their numbers retired. The number 7 of Pat Sullivan, Auburn's first Heisman Trophy winner. The number of 88, Auburn wide receiver, that was just so very, very good for Auburn. And of course, the 34 of Bo Jackson. So he I think deserves every bit of that accolade. To answer your question, that atmosphere on the 11th, it's Auburn and Georgia. If you just left it at that, the atmosphere is going to be great. It will be a night game at Jordan-Hare Stadium. And I understand and I agree with the atmosphere down in Baton Rouge at night. Come to Auburn for a night game and experience what it's like here at Auburn. It will be incredibly exciting. So hats off to what Cam has done in his career and did in his career. And it would be great to have him back for that Georgia game. He is a Georgia native, came to Auburn after playing at Florida, left Florida, went junior college route in Texas and came back to Auburn. And boy, Auburn is grateful that he did.
Yep, absolutely. That is Andy BURCHAM, voice of the Auburn Tigers, kind enough to join us here on Main Street Sports today as we continue our SEC previews. Andy, we appreciate you taking some time to join us here on this Wednesday afternoon. Have a good rest of your day.
My pleasure, guys. Have a great one. War Eagle.
Good. There you go. That is Andy BURCHAM, the voice of the Auburn Tigers, joining us here on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. After this break, little Braves in this day in Braves history, as our Bravos picked up a win last night over the Chicago White Sox in comeback fashion down at Truist Park. Stay with us.
They walk among us, but at 240 miles per hour, become something more. They're thrill seekers, risk takers, and maybe just a little bit unhinged. Buckle up. This new era of speed, this racing revolution, it's just getting started.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Miller. Main Street Media is partnering with BURCHAM Bourbon Music City Grand Prix at the Nashville Superspeedway to send a family of 4 to the race August 31st. To register, please visit any Main Street Media website and look for the Register Here banner. You'll also receive some fantastic BURCHAM Bourbon Music City merchandise. We look forward to seeing you at the race.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today.
This day in Braves history, August 20th, 2011. Braves second baseman Dan Uggla, former Middle Tennessee native, homers twice as the Atlanta Braves run away from the visiting Diamondbacks 8-1 at Turner Field. Uggla delivered a 2-run shot in the first inning and went back-to-back with first baseman Freddie Freeman in the seventh. The Braves right-hander Brandon Beachy got the start on the mound and tossed 6 innings of 1-run ball as Atlanta picked up its 75th win of the season. That was this date in Braves history, August 20th, 2011. Yours truly would have been 11 years old. So, Calvin, how old would you have been in 2011, August 20th?
9 years old.
There you go, 9 years old, the ripe age of 9. Last night, I guess for the first time since I think we've been together, Calvin, the Braves won on a Tuesday. They picked up the win over the Chicago White Sox down at Truist Park in Atlanta in comeback fashion last night, rallying from a 6-run deficit to defeat the Southsiders. Braves picked up their 57th of the win of the season. They're now 57-69. And Calvin, over the last couple of weeks, Michael Harris has been one of the hottest hitters in baseball. He had a 2-run home run in the first inning last night. Jurickson Profar has also been really hitting the ball well and getting on base for the Braves from that leadoff spot. Speaking of Harris, he's hit safely in 12 straight games. 8 of those, he recorded at least 2 hits. Over that stretch, he's batting .471, 24 for 51, 6 home runs, 11 runs scored, 17 RBIs, also 4 doubles and 2 steals. So, Michael Harris is a guy, Calvin, that's going to be central to this Braves core moving forward. Mo has said it time and time again, one of the bright sides of this season, obviously, despite the frustrations of the Braves being 12 games under 500 here in the dog days of August, was Michael Harris's resurgence and kind of showing that, with the glove already being gold glove caliber, with the offense, when he presses, it's top 5 level center fielder in the game.
Yeah, early in the year, I don't think he could have put a beach ball in play if you threw it to him. He was striking out a ton. He almost never walked. But ever since the break, the All-Star break, he's been one of the best hitters, one of the best outfielders in baseball. And when he was having that rough stretch, up until the All-Star break, there were people saying send him down to AAA and all those type of things. You can't send him down anyway just because his defense is so good. You just have to trust that he's going to figure the offensive part of it out, and it looks like it has. And I talked about this with Wade yesterday. The Braves were able to complete the comeback yesterday. We're not as fortunate on Monday, and I was talking with Wade. I told him that over the past couple of years, with how good the Braves have been, I never thought that it would get to a point where I had to hope that the Braves would come back and win a game against the team that set the record for fewest wins in a single season in the history of Major League Baseball. But that's where we're at right now this season with the Braves. They'll take any win they can get, and Ozzie Albies has been playing better after having a pretty brutal season up to this point. But Michael Harris has really been kind of the bright spot for the Braves over the last little over a month since the All-Star break.
Yeah, he was a guy around the All-Star break, Calvin, as you mentioned, kind of floating around the Mendoza line. I believe around 210 was his batting average. He's bumped up over the last month and a half to 259, so borderline 260. I'm already set a career high in RBIs at 68. He's got 16 home runs, so he's been scorching to really kind of resurrect his season per se. Obviously, we kind of talked about Michael here on the show a lot lately, but he has the ability to be able to carry an offense. The Braves moved him to the cleanup spot last night, and he delivered with a 2-run shot in the first inning. The Braves will go for the series victory over the Southsiders of Chicago tonight at Truist Park. That is a 6:15 first pitch. Left-hander Martin Perez is going to get the start for Chicago. He's 1-2 on the year with a 3.09 ERA. Right-hander Hurston Waldrop will look to continue his really great start to his season. Obviously, it started later, kind of by fluke. Obviously, the rain hit the Bristol Speedway Classic with the Braves and the Reds. Waldrop was called up kind of as just an extra man to pitch that day, showed flashes of brilliance against the Reds, and he's been phenomenal. He's 3-0 with a 1.02 ERA. He's really pitched well in his last couple starts against the Guardians and the Marlins. So the right-hander out of Florida, former first-round pick for the Braves, doing good things as they look to take the series tonight down at Truist Park in Atlanta. A team that is struggling of late, to say the least, and that is struggling to score runs. That is Wade's Houston Astros. They fell last night to the Detroit Tigers, 1-0 in extra innings. They have been held scoreless for the last 28 innings, Calvin. They have not scored a run since August 16th versus the Baltimore Orioles. They lost last night up in Detroit to the Tigers on a walk-off walk. Their series finale, they're trying to avoid getting swept, is currently underway. That pitching matchup was left-hander Framber Valdez for Houston taking on former Brave Charlie Morton for the Tigers. Trying to get your score really quickly here in that one. That one is final, and the Astros are swept in that game. The Tigers take it 7-2. Really quickly diving through the box score. Valdez takes the loss in that one. He drops to 11-7. Looks like the Tigers scored 6 of their runs in the first inning against Framber, who had to eat it through 5. Charlie Morton was once again spectacular. 6 innings pitched, 3 hits, 2 runs, and 8 strikeouts. So the Astros continue to struggle, Calvin. They've struggling to score runs.
Yeah, they've, like you said, been slipping the last couple weeks into the last month of the season. Their lead over the Mariners over in that AL West race has slipped. I believe when me and Wade talked yesterday, the Astros were only a game and a half up on the Mariners. I don't know what the Mariners have done between or in the last 24 hours. But with the Astros losing, obviously that will more than likely, shrink their lead over the Mariners even more. And they were always, not always surprising, but, when they broke up that core of Altuve, Bregman, Correa, Springer, that group that got so used to going to the American League Championship Series and the World Series just about every year, it seemed like they would just take a massive drop off whenever they broke up that core. And up until now, that hasn't looked like the case. But, they've been slumping, like you said, over the last couple weeks, and playing one of the best teams in baseball this year in the Tigers is not a good recipe to break out of a slump.
Yeah, and I'm not going to pretend to be impressed. Granted, it's a series sample size. I watched the Mariners series pretty closely with the Mets this past weekend. Obviously, with the Little League Classic coming on Sunday Night Baseball a couple days ago, wasn't really impressed, obviously, with the way the Mariners are playing either. So it seems like really no one wants to take hold of that AL West. We'll continue to monitor that for Wade's sake moving forward. Some news and notes across Major League Baseball. We're going to start in the AAA level, and it's Mariners Victor Robles. I don't know, Calvin, if you saw his bat heave the other day at the AAA level, but he's been suspended for 10 games and given an undisclosed fine for Mark, you can feel free to play the video. That happened. Got hit high and tight by a fastball this past weekend at the AAA level. He's with AAA Tacoma, the affiliate of the Mariners, and he got suspended for that action of throwing the bat right at the pitcher. Also threw a bucket of bubble gum from the back porch of the dugout onto the field. So I don't know if we've seen blow-ups like that before, but that was certainly one of them.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of that even comes close to comparing to this, and it probably doesn't even come close because it's a totally different scenario, a lot bigger stage. But I wasn't even born yet. But when Roger Clemens threw the bat back at Mike Piazza in the World Series, the Subway Series, we see batters get annoyed at pitchers if they get hit every now and then. But sometimes they'll charge the mound, they'll act like they're gonna fight and throw fists and all that type of thing. But I don't think I've ever seen with my own eyes someone just fully take the bat and sling it at the pitcher.
Yeah, he probably was definitely not thinking in that moment. So hopefully he'll obviously have some time to think about it and have some remorse here as he sits for the next 10 games at the minor and major league level. So hopefully he'll learn his lesson from that per se. But moving on to some lighter news and obviously some important news and some historic news as well. For the Kansas City Royals, obviously they have a superstar at shortstop. Bobby Witt became the fastest player in Royals history yesterday to get to the 100 career home run mark. The youngest player in franchise history to do so at 25 years old and 66 days, faster than Carlos Beltran during the 2003 season. Royals manager Matt Quintero said, I just want him up there every inning. I mean, you look at the lineup and you're trying to figure out how many times can we get into the plate and how many guys can we get on base for him. Obviously, Bobby Witt, one of the premier players in the game with his he becomes one of 6 shortstops in the past 95 years hit at least 100 homers through his age 25 season. That list includes Alex Rodriguez, Cal Ripken Jr., Francisco Lindor, Carlos Correa, and Hanley Ramirez. And of those players, only A-Rod and Hanley had 100 steals as well by their age 25 season. So some historic news right there for one of the good guys in our game and one of the elite talents in Bobby Witt Jr.
Yeah, he's really turned into, definitely one of the premier shortstops in baseball, if not the best shortstop in baseball. Up there with Francisco Lindor, probably. It's probably a toss-up between those two who the best shortstop in baseball is. But, I've had a somewhat of a first-hand experience watching Bobby Witt Jr. this year. He's been one of the bright spots on my fantasy baseball team that's won, I believe, 5 games this year. And we're in the end of August. So thank you, Bobby Witt Jr., for being the player that you are and single-handedly carrying me to 2 or 3 wins in fantasy baseball.
Moving on, obviously, Calvin struggling there, a little fantasy baseball. Moving on, we're going to talk about the Bronx Bombers, who most certainly did that last night in Tampa Bay. They became the first team in NBA history with multiple games with at least 9 home runs this season. Last night it was Giancarlo Stanton and Cody Bellinger both hitting 2 home runs. Aaron Judge launched his 40th home run of the season as well. Judge, Bellinger, and Stanton went back-to-back in the first inning. So it was a home run fest last night. Jazz Chisholm Jr. and Ben Rice also went deep for the Bombers in that game. And Jose Caballero also had a multi-home run game for the Yanks. So the Bronx Bombers doing it last night down at the minor league park that is Tampa Bay right now. I guess it's their spring training facility, so they're used to hitting there.
Yeah, and they're another one of those teams like the Astros that had a really good start to the year, and then kind of leading up to the All-Star break, and ever since then they've hit a little bit of a slump. But getting Aaron Judge back healthy after he missed some time was big for them, and having guys like Jazz Chisholm Jr., like you mentioned, who hasn't necessarily had a type of season that they're used to having. Having those guys, play a little bit better and getting Judge back healthy in this part of the year is going to be huge for their postseason hopes. They're now 4.5 games behind the Blue Jays in those AL East standings. They're only a game ahead of the Boston Red Sox for third place. So that's probably one of the tighter division races in baseball right now. Be interesting to watch how the AL MVP race winds down with Judge and Cal Raleigh over in Seattle. So we'll keep an eye on that division race. And, the playoffs are always a little more exciting with the Yankees in them, whether you like them or you hate them.
Yep, and then some last night, concluding here our MLB chatter segment here on Main Street Sports Today here on this Wednesday afternoon here in Nashville for me, up and in Clarksville for Calvin. Some historic news and notes last night from First Horizon Park here in Nashville as Sounds manager Rick Sweet moved into third place all-time in minor league baseball history on the wins list for managers last night with the Sounds 7-3 win over the Louisville Bats. Sweet earned his 2,418th career victory as the Sounds won that game. Also, Raynel Delgado, infielder for the Sounds, hit for the cycle last night, become the first Sound to do so since 2011. So historic night for the Sounds. Calvin, I couldn't imagine being Rick Sweet, obviously the tenure that he's had in minor league baseball, to win 2,418 games.
Yeah, that's a ton of wins in baseball. And, we talk about the dog days of summer every year. That's a lot of dog days for someone who spent most of his life in minor league baseball. 2,400 wins, that's just a ton. I couldn't imagine, coaching or managing minor league baseball for that long and to have that level of success where you can get to that many wins. He's obviously one of the all-time greats in minor league baseball, and we're fortunate to have him here in Nashville, and they're the feeder program for now what is the best team in baseball in the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah, absolutely. So congrats to Rick. Congrats to Raynel Delgado as well, as they both make history last night in the first game of this series opener of a 6-game slate against the Louisville Bats. Coming up after this break here on Main Street Sports Today, we'll dive into the grab bag with some news and notes, not only across the NFL, but golf and some preps to pros as well. So stay with us here on Main Street Sports Today.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today. Custom Stone Handlers supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with Riverstone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe the measure of any person or company is how you treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStoneHandlers.com.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Welcome back in. It is Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports Today, presented to you by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm David Wilson. That is Calvin White. Time to grab into the latest edition of the Grab Bag. Calvin and Wade did this yesterday, and it's now Calvin and I's turn to dive into some news and notes across, the world of sports overall. We'll start here locally, here in Nashville, and it's good news for Titans fans. As L'Jarius Sneed has passed his physical and taken off the physically unable to perform list. Obviously, he's a guy, Calvin, who signed a big contract after the trade with Kansas City, one of the premier corners in the NFL, leading the Kansas City to Super Bowl runs, obviously, with their historic offense in Patrick Mahomes. Sneed had surgery to address a quad injury that kept him out of play last year, and also underwent a knee cleanup as well. But this is a guy, obviously the Titans gave away a 2025 third-round pick and signed into a 4-year, $76 million deal. But this is a guy who has the ability to lock down one side of the field, and with the emergence of Jarvis Brownlee Jr. last year, Calvin, the Titans have to like, when Sneed is healthy, their ability at the cornerback position.
Yeah, I remember going into last year, people were talking about how last year's secondary might have been the most talented secondary the Titans have ever had, with L'Jarius Sneed and Roger McCreary, Amani Hooker, those guys. And then, Sneed got hurt, and then everything kind of went downhill from there. The Titans just got torched on defense last year. It seems like no matter who the opponent was, no matter who the quarterback was, it was free game out there against the Titans. They could throw it all over the place against that secondary. But getting L'Jarius Sneed back, and Roger McCreary, Amani Hooker, those guys having another year under their belt. If the offense isn't better than it was last year for the Titans, hopefully the defense can kind of step in there and maybe make the Titans a little bit more competitive than they were last season.
Yeah, this was a long road to recovery for Sneed. Last time he played was Week 5 last year against the Indianapolis Colts. The initial injury diagnosis was a bruise of that quad. It was later found to be a strain and required more rest than anticipated. Sneed said Wednesday in a press conference that it's a very big release, coming out here and being part of everybody as a whole, and not just being in the building doing rehab all the time. Another statement here by defensive coordinator Denard Wilson before practice. It's good to have him back out there. He's chomping at the bit and has done everything in his power in the training room to get to this point. I'm excited for the young man, but not just the football player, because I know the work he has put in. So this is a guy who's, like I said, going to be a huge piece for that Titans defense. Obviously, with him not back there, it lessens the depth of that unit. But he's a guy, as I mentioned, that has had the ability to lock down one side of the field and hopefully help that pass rush get a little home against some quarterbacks in the division. Obviously, C.J. Stroud with Trevor Lawrence. Those guys, that pass rush is going to have to eat after them. And obviously, the wide receiving cores of the AFC South are getting better as well. So good for L'Jarius Sneed. Good for the Titans as they get back on the right track. Another note here locally, and I mentioned this and working on a piece as well here for the Wilson Post. NASCAR, it's returning to Nashville Super Speedway. It's announced its dates 2026 season. It'll be once again a triple header weekend for Nashville and the NASCAR Cup Series, as the Craftsman Truck Series, the newly named O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and the NASCAR Cup Series take to the banks of the concrete 1.3 mile track here in Lebanon, May 29th through the 31st of next year. Year after year, we're so honored to welcome NASCAR, back to Middle Tennessee, said Matt Grexy, general manager of Nashville Superspeedway. Our fans and community have embraced this weekend as a can't-miss celebration to kick off the summer. The team here at Nashville Superspeedway takes pride in blending the best in racing with the energy and hospitality that Nashville is known for. This race weekend always delivers exciting finishes and unforgettable memories, and we know that 2026 will be no exception. Obviously, start times, on-track competition schedules, entertainment, obviously the broadcast information for all these races has just yet to be announced. So stay tuned for that on our Main Street Sports Today network newspapers. But NASCAR, Calvin, returning to Nashville once again. It's always a good weekend to see the best in the world driving around the concrete 1.3 mile track.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago when the Super Speedway announced that NASCAR was coming back after a long time not having a race there. People in Lebanon and the Nashville area got really excited. I'm from Lebanon, so I saw it firsthand. All throughout college before I got this job, I actually worked at the FedEx warehouse that was right behind the Super Speedway. We would always have big meetings every year the week of the race, where our bosses would bring us in and they would say, leave early because you will be late if you try to get here at the same time as the start of the races. You would drive up the interstate and there would be race traffic for 10 miles backed up on the interstate trying to get off and get to that super speedway. So the super speedway out in Lebanon has really kind of, hauled in massive audiences ever since NASCAR decided to return there.
Yeah, absolutely. We promised on this show to take it from preps to pros, and this nugget and note not only stood out to myself, but obviously Maurice Patton as well, who passed it along to us. This is according to Yahoo Sports, and it says that Miami-Dade schools agreed to a $13.5 million, yes, million with an M, partnership with Adidas, which will provide equipment to over 40 schools in the Miami-Dade County area. It says the athletes in Miami-Dade County Public Schools have a for the next 5 years. The organization announced a $13.5 million partnership with Adidas, which will supply equipment to 40 different high schools in the area. As part of this deal, Adidas received naming rights to the field at Travis Powell Stadium. For the next 5 years, it was known as Adidas Field at Travis Powell Stadium down in there in the Miami area in Westview, Florida. So some new uniforms, some new equipment for the folks down there in the suburbs of Miami. Obviously, Adidas is plenty familiar with the area. They have partnerships with Florida Atlantic, the University of Miami, the U, and FIU as well. So, Calvin, some high schoolers down there getting decked out in some new Adidas gear.
Yeah, I bet that was really exciting for those high school kids to kind of get their own sponsored gear now through Adidas. We see that kind of similarly up here with, or not up here, but over there with Oakland and Murfreesboro being sponsored by Jordan. But I bet that was that's the thing that high schoolers love. Maybe not somebody that's older than them per se, but I bet that was really exciting for kids their age to get their own sponsored gear and just kind of feel like they belong.
Calvin, a couple of weeks ago, you went on the weekend to Memphis as the FedEx Cup got underway down in Shelby County. Obviously, this is just a nugget, obviously, about the Tour Championship coming up. And it's a news and note about Scotty Scheffler, who, according to BetESPN, has the shortest odds to win the tournament of a golfer since Tiger Woods had a shorter odd back in 2009. So kind of give me your thoughts as the weekend and the Tour Championships gets ready to go down in Georgia and Atlanta about Scotty Scheffler really being an odds-on betting favorite here to win the championship.
He is just so out of this world. Like, he's easily the most dominant golfer we've seen since prime Tiger Woods. And what makes it even more hilarious is Rory McIlroy is clearly the number 2 player in the world, and Scottie Scheffler is miles ahead of him right now. If he ends up winning the Tour Championship, he'll be the first player to ever go back-to-back and win it in consecutive seasons. I believe only a handful of players have won it multiple times. Rory McIlroy has. Tiger Woods won it twice. He's already in rarefied air in terms of the golf record book. He's already, I believe, top 20 or 25 in wins all time. He picked up his 18th win when he won on Sunday on the tour. The players have criticized the playoff format at times. How somebody who's not having, a great season can enter the FedEx Cup playoff inside the top 70 and, say you're the 65th ranked player entering the playoffs. As long as you are inside the cut line at the end of each tournament on Sunday, you can start the tournament or start the playoffs as the 65th ranked player in the FedEx Cup playoffs and end up, if you make it all the way to the last tournament coming up this week, you can go from the 65th ranked player and win the final tournament, and you're technically considered the season-long champion. People have criticized how it's not technically a season-long race. You can't advertise it as a season-long race if somebody has the ability to do that. But outside of Justin Rose and J.J. Spawn and Tommy Fleetwood, that first week of the playoffs over in Memphis, nobody's really given Scottie Scheffler a run for his money here in these FedEx Cup playoffs.
Yeah, plus 160. Scheffler's odds are the shortest of his PGA career, albeit against a condensed 30-player field this weekend. They are shortest odds for any player to win a PGA event since Tiger Woods back in 2009 at the Tour Championship when he entered at even money. Good note there. Thanks, Calvin, for his knowledge there. And then lastly here on our grab bag, we are down, and obviously I'm going to check here on ESPN in just a second. We're down to the final 8 up in Williamsport, Pennsylvania for the Little League World Series. I'm going to just try to get you quick score updates up there. The Chinese Taipei defeated Venezuela earlier this afternoon 7-3, and right now on ESPN in the bottom of the 4th inning, it's Fairfield, Connecticut 3 and Las Vegas, Nevada 3 in that matchup. Tonight's schedule, you got Aruba taking on Japan at 4 p.m. here local time, 5 p.m. Eastern time, and South Dakota taking on from South Carolina, 7 p.m. Eastern time. All those games are on ESPN. I believe this is an elimination round. So that will be win or go home for those programs up in Williamsport as they're living every kid's dream of playing ball on national TV, and they don't want to go back to school. So they're going to try to keep it pushing up there in Williamsport. That'll do it on this edition of the Grab Bag. Thanks for Calvin for grabbing some of those as well. Coming up after the break, it's going to be time to talk about Calvin's favorite subject. It's our weekly NASCAR segment with Heather Williams. We got a lot to discuss. Austin Dillon's big win at Richmond, the new NASCAR schedule, and obviously one race to go to the NASCAR playoffs. They hit the banks of Daytona International Speedway this Saturday night. So all that and more coming up with Heather on our weekly NASCAR segment right after this.
Deep in a forest at Nashville Zoo, new creatures here for you to view. Phantoms graced in black and white swing high in trees of dappled light. In rocky crags, tall and steep, small antelopes with nimble feet. A wise old man with beard of white, a sentry perched on stony height. Amidst it all, a hunter lies, with coat of gold and steely eyes. A new adventure just for you. Leopard Forest at Nashville Zoo. Open now.
They walk among us, but at 240 miles per hour, they become something more. They're thrill seekers, risk takers, and maybe just a little bit unhinged. This new era of speed, this racing revolution, it's just getting started.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily, as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
On Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, continues to roll on. I'm David Wilson. That is Calvin White. It's time for our weekly NASCAR segment as we sit down with Heather Williams to discuss the NASCAR schedule. Heather, how you doing?
I'm good. You gonna give Calvin the first question this week?
That's up to him if he wants it. Do you want to go first question? Or you want me to go? You got it.
I got it.
Go ahead.
You know, Heather, NASCAR released their 2026 schedule, I believe yesterday. You know, they're going to have the race out at their naval base in San Diego. They're bringing back Chicagoland, return of North Wilkesboro. Just kind of what are your thoughts on that 2026 NASCAR slate?
It's fascinating. Jordan Bianchi of The Athletic actually got an advance copy. He's one of the best reporters out there as far as sources. Released it yesterday. Official release was today, said on the Zoom call with NASCAR about the schedule. One of the things that they're super proud of, and one of the things that's really interesting about this schedule, is they're really trying to balance the call from the older fans to go back to more traditional tracks, so North Wilkesboro, Chicagoland. There's one fewer road course this year than there was next year that there was this year, but still kind of push forward with new and innovative things. You know, we're going to Coronado, as you mentioned, for the first street course race. So it's always an evolving thing. It's always an interesting balance. There are racetracks that are on completely different dates than they usually are. Like Watkins Glen is as early as I think I could ever remember it being. I think it's in May, early May. It's usually like July, August, September type of race. So I think it's going to be a good balance of tracks. Some of the dates are intriguing to me. I don't know how they're going to work out. North Wilkesboro is much later in the summer, which means it's going to be hot at North Wilkesboro. But we'll see. I think it's fun. I think it's fun to try new things and to go different places. If I can find somebody's luggage to stow away in to get to Coronado, I got to get out to San Diego. I think that's going to be amazing.
Yeah, Heather, really quickly, I think three things stood out to me when I looked at the new schedule. Obviously, you mentioned in North Wilkesboro getting a points race. It's really drawn well the last couple of years. The All-Star race has been absolutely packed. And so I know the traditional fans are excited about that. I guess I want to ask your question on these next two. Dover being the All-Star race kind of raises some eyebrows for me. Obviously, when you think of All-Star race, you think of shorter stints per se, needing a wider track. It takes Dover some time, it seems like, the last couple of years to kind of widen out and get multiple grooves. Give me your thoughts on that. And obviously the return of the championship race to Homestead Miami Speedway. Seems like the drivers really were excited about that and wanted that, a track that produces a lot of great racing. Seems like the next-gen car is built for those mile and a half. So give me your thoughts on those two.
Yeah, I'll answer that first because I think it was a no-brainer. And they're going to rotate this around to kind of like the Super Bowl. They're going to have a rotation of tracks that will be championship eligible type tracks. And I think under this generation, being at Homestead is, and maybe Vegas, Weather-wise, I don't know how Nashville or Kansas play into it, but definitely those are the kind of tracks where you want in this generation car to have your championship because it's just best suited for those tracks. So I think that's a no-brainer. I think it's going to be great. And they're going to put, NASCAR announced on this call today, they're putting a ton of money to upgrade Homestead Miami Speedway to kind of bring it up to championship standards. So I think that'll be great as well. When it comes to the All-Star race at Dover, I think this is a instance, much like when the All-Star race was at Texas a few years ago, that Speedway Motorsports controls the tracks where the All-Star race is, right? And it was at Charlotte forever. It was at Bristol during COVID. It spent that short period in Texas and then moved to North Wilkesboro. I think it's just an instance where it's the odd man out, if that makes sense. Like they had to take a points race from somewhere, and unfortunately, attendance-wise, performance-wise, Dover seemed to be the track where they felt like it wasn't really giving them what they want for a points race, which is, I love the Monster Mile. It's just small enough though that it has kind of suffered under this next gen car because short track racing is not that great, especially on it being concrete. It hasn't been as good in this generation car as Dover has been in the past. I hate to see them lose a points late race. I hope that they find a way to get them a points race back at some point, but I think there's a combination of attendance and the race had to come from somewhere, right? And you're not going to take the race from Bristol. You're not going to take the race from New Hampshire only has one date. You're not going to take it from Vegas. Like when you start looking Nashville, when you start looking at the tracks that SMI owned, Dover just kind of ended up being the guy that had to lose a race. So I think that's kind of what happened here. It is going to be interesting because NASCAR basically said it's going to be a day race. Dover doesn't have lights. So I think the thing for me is I don't know how I feel about that All-Star race at 2:00 on a Saturday afternoon. This isn't sexy to me. I don't like it, but we'll see what's happening. And conversely, along those lines, because you mentioned North Wilkesboro, they're going to have to make some improvements on North Wilkesboro for it to be a points race. One of the big things that they talked about today is they got to get some kind of crossover tunnel, some kind of passover tunnel. You know, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. hanging out for 50 laps to kick Kyle Busch's rear end a few years ago was great, but you don't want a guy that wrecks on lap 2 of a 400 lap race to be stuck there all day. So they're going to have to rate either some kind of either pass under or pass over tunnel at North Wilkesboro. I don't know if it'll happen this year, but for continued points races, because asking someone to be stuck in the tunnel for 3 hours is a long time. And what if there's a medical emergency? They've had that before at one of the road courses where they had to throw a red flag so that somebody could get out of the infield. So I think that that was some of the more interesting stuff that came from the call as far as the questions you asked about those 3 tracks.
Heather Williams of WCYB Sports joining us here on Main Street Sports today. And Heather, I'm going to give you all the credit. I feel like you were very prophetic last week. You said Austin Dillon has this knack for walk-off wins. That was quote for quote what you said. And you know, he kind of dominated the last portion of this weekend's race in Richmond, clinches his way into the playoffs. And, you know, him and RC were kind of quick to say, you know, this wasn't redemption. You know, they truly believe that, you know, they earned and won that race last year. And, you know, they did. Obviously didn't make the playoffs because of it. But it seems like, you know, Austin has this knack with Richmond tire saving, the certain line that he runs to run well there. And he did it again this past weekend.
Yeah, I don't think it's redemption either, because what happened last year was a self-inflicted wound. They did have the best car last year at Richmond. I don't think anyone would dispute that. I think, you know, when the restarts happen, and it happens to a ton of people. It happened a couple of years ago to Denny Hamlin where people were running out of gas, and he had the best car, but he didn't win the race because he ran out of gas. Like, when those restarts start happening, the best car doesn't always win. So I don't think it was a surprise to anyone that Austin Dillon came back and was as good as he was this year. But the fact that he was able to finish it off without wrecking people is why he's in the playoffs this year. They're very good at Richmond. I don't know that there are tracks in the playoffs that he's going to be able to do much, but kudos for him because, I mean, he won straight up. They were the best car for a lot of the day on Saturday, or a lot of the night on Saturday night, especially the third stage. And now they're in the playoffs.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned that with his win, it shrinks that cut line on the bubble per se. The person who finished in second place to him Saturday night is probably the person who's not sleeping this week in Alex Bowman, really between him and Tyler Reddick. So, well, I guess what's the nerves in not only the 2311 camp with Tyler Reddick, but the Hendrick Motorsports camp with Alex Bowman this week as they head to Daytona, where, it's a wild card.
Yeah, I mean, this reminds you a lot of, what was it, 3 years ago when Ryan Blaney was like 5th in points and Martin Truex Jr. was like 8 in points, and only one of them was going to get in. I mean, it's very much shades of that. You could have a guy that's in the top 10 in points that doesn't make the playoffs, which is wild to think about. I actually had an opportunity to talk to William Byron and Chase Elliott this week. Hendrick Motorsports is really focused on getting Alex Bowman into the playoffs. And I'm sure, not just Hendrick, but also some of the affiliated Hendrick type teams, Spire Motorsports and stuff, they'll all be working together to get, one of those cars in, whether it's Alex or one of the Spire cars, to try to win this race or to get them, if Alex can get in on points somehow, because he is close enough to Reddick now that he can catch him. I mean, yes, he finished second last week, and yes, he's on the cut line, but he gained a ton last week on Tyler Reddick and could, if Reddick wrecks early, he could certainly leapfrog him on the points and get in that last spot on points, even if there is a new winner. So I think, the Chevy teams will really be focused on that. I think that, the Toyota teams will really be focused on trying to get Tyler Reddick in. And so that'll be a really interesting dynamic to watch over the night. Because there's going to be as many people probably trying to help their teammates get in as there are trying to win, which always walks a fine line for NASCAR.
Heather, the regular season finale is going to be this Saturday at Daytona International Speedway. Obviously, we've been talking about those final playoff spots and things like that. Just what are some storylines that you kind of have your eye on going into that regular season finale?
Chaos, for sure. It always is, because there's so many guys, I alluded to it, that are on so many different agendas. There's going to be guys, from Cody Ware all the way up to Tyler Reddick, all thinking they have a chance to win and grab one of those last two playoff spots. And at Daytona, you kind of do. I mean, Cody Ware's had his best performances. He's the guy that's last in points. He's had his best performances at super speedways. So I'm sure he's going in there. Why not me? Michael McDowell won a few years ago. Now, Michael wasn't quite as far back as Cody is in the running order most weeks, but, stranger things have happened. Harrison Burton was almost that far back last year and won and raced his way into the playoffs. So people are probably going to be more aggressive than they normally will be, even early on, chasing stage points and all that kind of stuff. It could get pretty wild pretty quick, and generally does in this race. And I think you need to be watching those teams that are desperate, and then juxtapose that to the 45 and the 48 who are out there probably trying to get stage points, keeping an eye on each other, trying to be cagey, trying to stay close enough to strike, but also out of trouble enough that they can maybe get in on points, especially if a repeat winner happens. So a lot of different agendas. And of course, fuel saving. Fuel saving at super speedways is always a thing now. It kind of, because I like to see them race full out, but it's what this car has become because it's so hard to pass. You have to try to do your passing on pit road, put a little bit extra less fuel, 1 second less on pit road than the guy that you're trying to chase down. So it's going to be a complicated night. There's going to be a lot going on. And, your guess is as good as mine when they put all the cars into the blender who doesn't come up all torn up, because that'll be your winner.
Yeah, Heather, that's kind of the fascination with this is obviously with a track that's the size of Daytona compared to Talladega, there's not a lot of room to hide. Those straightaways are very narrow. Those corners are very narrow, and there's just no really riding around in the back. Obviously, you're not going to with the ability to pass, as you mentioned. So it seems like sometimes the safest place is to be in the front, and that the chaos also starts there. So you kind of mentioned it last year. Harrison Burton was the walk-off winner, passing Kyle Busch on the last lap down the backstretch to clinch his spot in the playoffs. I know it's really hard with Daytona to pick a winner, but if there was somebody to come from outside the playoff picture, you think about Kyle Busch, you think about Brad Keselowski, Michael McDowell, guys that have won in the past on speedway racetracks. Who you looking at maybe as a guy that can work his way in the playoffs and maybe upset a Tyler Reddick or Alex Bowman and kind of ruin their playoff chances?
I don't love Kyle Busch just because he's a good speedway racer, but generally not Daytona. Talladega is the better track for him, and really the same for Keselowski. Although Brad's team has been running, you look at last year or 2 years ago when RFK finished 1-2 with Chris Buescher and Brad Keselowski. I think both of them and Ryan Preece throw them in the mix because RFK does run so well there. I think all three of them have a really good chance, although all three of them are trying to get in. So who knows when it's the final lap, they're probably not going to help each other very much because they're all three trying to get themselves in and only one of them has a chance to do so. Do you like the Spire cars? I think McDowell and Carson Hocevar especially could play a spoiler. If you twisted my arm and told me who I think is the most likely to come from the outside and win, I would probably go with Chris Buescher because he has won at Daytona. He is very good on the super speedways, although he hates the super speedways. He is very good there. So if you twisted my arm and made me pick a guy, that would probably be who I would go with. But it's Daytona, man. I mean, who knows? Who knows who could win there? I mean, Ty Dillon could win there. He's certainly a very good super speedway racer and has had a lot of success, especially in the lower series. So your guess is as good as mine.
Really quickly before we let you go, Heather, I believe Chase Elliott was here in the Nashville area this past week previewing the Bristol night race. Obviously, they're going over some construction in the infield coming off the Speedway Classic. Just really quickly, obviously, just kind of give us your thoughts. Obviously, we're still a few weeks away, but Bristol around the corner in the playoff race, always some chaos there as well.
Yeah, it's a cutoff race. So much like this week at Daytona, guys will be desperate. Guys will be trying different strategies and doing different things and willing to bump people out of the way to try to advance to the next round of the playoffs. We haven't had a chance to see the infield yet. There's going to be a chance probably in the next week or so to see the construction, but I did get a chance to ask Jerry Caldwell about it yesterday when he was with Chase Elliott up in Nashville. And he says it looks more like a racetrack than the baseball field now, that the retransformation is going really well. So I never doubted it. Speedway Motorsports, they have this stuff down to a science, especially at Bristol. All the years of converting it back and forth from dirt, going from a football field to a baseball field or to a racetrack and back again. They know how to do this. So I cannot believe it's only 3 weeks away. It's coming super fast, and Bristol Under the Lights is special. Even as much as the next gen car has struggled, there's just something really special about Bristol Under the Lights.
Got it. That is Heather Williams of WCYB Sports, kind enough to join us here on Main Street Sports Today for our weekly segment. Heather, thanks as always.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Fun.
All right. Turn around the corner here on Main Street Sports Today. It's time for Calvin's second favorite segment. It's Wild and Wacky Wednesday. We'll dive into the weirdest and the wackiest stories from across the globe. So Calvin is, I guess, carefully and meticulously searched the web for the wildest and wackiest. We know he loves those Guinness World Records. We'll see if we have another. Was it the beaver a couple weeks ago that was just humongous?
I think it was the rat.
Rat, that is, yeah, just absolutely big. So we'll see what Calvin has in store for us next here on Main Street Sports Today as we dive into our final segment. Stay with us.
Being in Tennessee, we wanted to try to keep it as local as possible, so we have an entire section of our menu that is just dedicated to local whiskeys like Uncle Nearest, Jack Daniels, of course, George Dickel, Nelson Brothers, Greenbrier whiskey, and all of our taps are all local. From 2 o'clock until midnight, we've got food every day for you guys. A good handful of appetizers, some entrees, and a couple salads and things like that. My name is Ethan Kanata. Please come down and see us at the Pick Lobby Bar here at the Omni in Nashville.
At Delta Dental of Tennessee, we know our success begins and ends with providing superior quality service, and that includes serving those who need it most. This year, we're celebrating 25 years of giving back to the community we call home. Delta Dental, along with our Smile 180 Foundation, supports Tennessee's dental colleges and oral health education, children's hospitals, free and reduced cost dental clinics, and other like-minded charities. Here's to the next 25 plus years of ensuring healthy smiles.
There's a line that links us all. Most of the time, we don't even think about it, but it's everywhere. Illuminating our neighborhoods, empowering our businesses, and helping us to recharge. Whether it comes from our grids, the sun, or a kind heart, we believe in the power of good energy. And as your family and region continue to grow, you can trust that we'll always be there for you. Middle Tennessee Electric, bringing good energy.
Welcome back in. It is Main Street Sports today here on this wild and wacky Wednesday. I'm David Wilson coming to you from our respective home here in Nashville, Tennessee. That is Calvin White coming to you from up in Montgomery County in Clarksville. Looking forward to wrapping up this show. Looking forward to high school football on the docket this week. As I mentioned, I will be at Green Hill and Beach tomorrow night on my TV 30. Feel free to come by and say hello if you're making a trip to the Hill. If you see me on TV, wave at me. Also be at Friendship Christian on Friday night as they host Trousdale County. Calvin have a busy week this week. I believe he's covering some soccer either tonight or tomorrow night. And then on Friday, he's going to White House and Greenbrier. Should be a good matchup there between two Robertson County foes. But for the time being, for the next 18 minutes, Calvin has meticulously searched in the web for the weirdest and the wackiest stories from across the globe. So without further ado, I will turn it over to one Calvin White.
Yeah, we're going to start with, one that's probably up there with the wackiest that we've talked about, at least as long as I've been putting the wild and wacky topics together. But Colombia, this family in Colombia, the country, they had a child.
You're prefacing, right? Not Columbia,
Yes.
Tennessee. Columbia,
No,
the country.
Yeah, this
Okay, there we
family
go.
had a
We're ready.
this family had a baby, and they named it Chat Yippity after Chat GPT, the AI program. It
Can you spell?
says
So chat is CHAT, first name.
yes. Last name is YIPITI. I don't know if that's Yippity, but that's what I'm going to go with. It says, according to local media, the parents said they chose the name as a tribute to the era of artificial intelligence. I never thought that we would be having any sort of tribute for artificial intelligence, much less naming your child after an AI program.
I mean, the child is probably going to grow up to hate its name and therefore want to change it. I think that's the first thing that I divulged from that you told me. The child is going to grow up to probably hate its parents for its name. I mean, I guess its name is Chat. That's the name, but we can. I would hope they would have other kids per se. Like if you just had one child and you just named him Chat Yippity or whatever you said, like, come on, man, like that's rough. But I think people in other countries do things differently. So, I mean, it is what it is. They probably think some of the names that we have are obviously different. I mean, you and I very much so have common names. Can't get more basic than David, David, and Calvin, Calvin. So that's just different, to say the least. So feel free to give me your thoughts on that as well, though.
This story says in Colombia, while the law does not specify a list of prohibited names, it gives officials at the National Civil Registry the authority to deny registration if they believe a name could harm a child's dignity or reputation. So
And they didn't do that one?
So
They didn't flag that one?
somebody in charge somewhere decided that Chat Yippity was a name that could fly over there in Colombia.
That's crazy that they had that kind of law per se, and they didn't flag that name. So to his is their own. Congrats to the family on the child, but that wouldn't be on the list of names. Not to say that I have a list of names. You don't put the cart before the horse. But yeah, that's kind of wild to me, to say the least. So that ranks up there for sure, Calvin. So kudos to you for finding that one.
We got one of our wackiest subjects out of the way. And it seems like this next topic, it seems like every week we always have some sort of animal story, whether it's somebody's pet that's escaping, or just a rogue animal loose. We talked last week about a bear getting its head stuck in a jar. But this week we're going to talk about a rogue emu. The headline reads, Colorado police wrangle emu on the loose in Lakewood. So this emu was just out and about, taking a tour of the city of Lakewood over in Colorado. It says the Lakewood Police Department posted photos to social media showing the emu officers found, quotation marks, playing in the street. So they found this little guy. I mean, I'm sure he's not that little, but they were able to track down and wrangle this rogue emu from possibly getting hit by a car or hurting anybody else.
I think the first thing you said about that, I thought about the commercial, Limu Emu, from
Limu
the
emu.
insurance commercial. So I was like, is this the bird from the commercial? Is he okay? Because I always catch my dad when I go to the house laughing about that. I mean, look at that. That is the one. When you think about the commercial, you think of that bird right there. So
Is that a leash?
Is
Do
that
they have that thing on a
what?
leash?
I mean, I guess. I mean, I guess. I've never seen one before. Like, obviously, I mean,
I haven't either.
I just don't Google, emus per se. But yeah, I think the first thing I thought about was the commercial when you thought about that. So that's funny.
Yeah, it also seems like Colorado's a weird place to have an emu. Like, I'm not an emu expert. I don't know where they're local to, but that's like I feel like that's a weird place to have an emu.
Have you been?
To Colorado?
Yeah,
I have not.
I haven't either. So, I'm sure it's a very interesting place, to say the least. So, but no, I was just curious. I don't know where they are native to per se. I'm not educated on the topic, so I might.
I guess David's internet cutting a little in and out there. Producer Mark tells us that emus are native to Australia. So this story does not specify whether this emu was someone's pet. I would assume so, since they are not native to the area. We're going to try and get David back in here. I wish he could see how he looks frozen on the screen. But Mark, until we get David back, producer Mark also tells us that there are emu farms over in Colorado. So that could be the source of the emu. But until we get David back, we're just going to keep on rolling. Hopefully get David back in here soon. Our next wild and wacky story takes us to a grown man getting stuck inside of a tube slide at a park. Emergency responders in Connecticut were called to a playground for an unusual rescue when a 40-year-old man became wedged inside the middle portion of a tube slide. The town of Vernon Fire Department said on social media that crews responded alongside Vernon EMS and the Vernon Police Department just after 4:30 p.m. Saturday for a confined space rescue of a 40-year-old adult male stuck in a tube slide on the playground. So, to be determined how this man got himself stuck in that slide. Obviously, that would probably be on a list of somebody's most embarrassing moments. That is definitely not something that I would want to happen to me. Says the man was said to be wedged feet and head first in the middle portion of the slide at Northeast Elementary School. Photos from the scene show the man had somehow ended up sideways with his body folded at the waist. So somehow this man got not only stuck in the slide, but folded sideways in the slide. Firefighters removed a section of slide to reach where the man was stuck. The patient was freed within 30 minutes and was evaluated on scene by EMS. The patient refused treatment and transport to a local emergency room, according to the fire department. Still no David. Producer Mark says he asked, did he not know how to go down a slide? It does not appear that way. Instead of your typical feet or head first down that slide, he got himself stuck sideways. But it appears we do have David Wilson back in the on deck circle with us. David, you're back. Have you been listening to my rant about this man that got stuck in a playground slide?
First of all, I want to know, how long was I gone? Was I frozen? Like, I feel like I've been glitching all day.
You were fine up until the last couple of minutes, and then you froze for about 30 seconds. And we did
I was
not.
gone.
So, yeah, you were gone. You were out of the picture. So I have been entertaining our guests about this 40-year-old man who got himself stuck in a playground slide and had to be rescued by the fire department.
What was he doing sliding down the slide? Like, why is he not at work?
We don't know. He went down, instead of going down feet first, he went down sideways and got himself stuck sideways in the slide.
So in this picture, the first thing I noticed is they had to take this bottom part off. Agree?
Yes.
Seems like he was stuck right there in the middle. So I guess he must have been just screaming. Imagine how hot it is. Where's this at?
It doesn't say.
If this was in the South,
Till I
he'd be
can find
dead.
it.
He'd be
Yeah.
dead because how hot it is outside, being stuck in the middle of the slide. And
Oh,
there's no
Connecticut.
airflow up through there. Okay, it's not probably terrible up there. There's no
Yeah,
airflow
no.
in them things.
No.
So God bless him. But that's why you will not find me sliding down no slide.
Yeah.
I don't think we have time to do those kind of activities, Calvin. So
We do not.
Maybe on a Saturday or a weekend, but we don't have time for those kind of adventures here.
No.
Not with
it
this
says-
schedule.
No, he was stuck in there for a little over 30 minutes before the fire department was able to successfully get him out. But moving on to our next story, you mentioned at the start of the show, we like our world records on Wild and Wacky Wednesday. This North Carolina woman recaptures the world record for Coca-Cola collection. Says a soft drink superfan from North Carolina recaptured a Guinness World Record title when her collection of Coca-Cola memorabilia was tallied at 5,623 unique items. So this woman has, a little over 5,600 individual pieces of Coca-Cola memorabilia. I don't know if this is, we ask this question every week. I don't know if this is something she set out to do or if she's just a huge Coke fan and, just decided to stack up her inventory over the years.
I am a old school. I like those old school Coke bottles, though. I like that. I try to not to be a soft drinker, if that makes sense. Like I try to have maybe one a week to be good. I'm getting to the age now where I have to be careful what the doctor report says. I've been told at times I'm a little chubby. So I try to cut things and drink the water, but I feel like that is pretty cool to say it here or there. But if I was to drink a soft drink, Coke would be up there on the list for me. So there will be worse soft drinks to collect.
This story says that the woman's husband, his father, worked for Pepsi. So in the beginning of their relationship, it was kind of a no-no to have Coca-Cola around in the house. So in some ways, she's kind of a trailblazer. She kind of paved her own path to, go against the
In
grain.
one way
and,
or another.
Yeah, go win against the grain and stacked up her Coca-Cola collection. Transitioning into our next one. This is one that David and I would assume, have both seen. But Brewers manager Pat Murphy went viral last week for talking about his pocket pancake that he has in his pocket during games. He said during day games.
First of all, they need to help Trisha Whitaker out with them headphones. I mean, goodness gracious. Just get her some earbuds or something, or an earpiece. Why she got to have the big old headphones on? My rant. Continue.
I don't know, but he said he gets a little hungry during day games. So sometimes he'll have a pancake or a waffle or a bagel in his pocket during the game to kind of, soothe his hunger. Says Murphy went viral in a recent interview for pulling a pancake out of his uniform pocket and taking a bite, sharing the flapjack with the reporter as he detailed different ways he shoves food into his pockets to snack on in the dugout. Then the Brewers announced Friday that Murph's pocket pancakes will be sold at American Family Field during Sunday games for the rest of the season, starting with this weekend series against the New York Mets. So you can go out and get your own Murphy's flapjack.
Go ahead and play it, Mark.
Actually, I got a little pocket pancake right here that I munch on. They're wonderful. You want some?
Not her taking the part that he bit off
Pizza,
of.
bagels. What else do you keep in your pocket?
Whatever fits. I like a lot of different things during
she
the game.
literally
This
took the
pancake,
part. You got to take the opposite end. She took the end that he bit off of. Goodness gracious! But look, I am not I'm not a pancake guy, and that might be criminal. But I would prefer a waffle. But I mean, kudos to the Brewers, best team in baseball right now. Lights out, taking advantage of the promotional idea to sell some pancakes on Sunday day games at American Family Field. So hat tip to them.
Absolutely. And then, this might be our wackiest story yet. We saved the wackiest for last. I'm just going to read you this headline, and then we're going to get your reaction. The headline reads, Denmark Zoo asks people to donate their small pets as food for captive predators.
Oh.
Yeah. No.
I'm not giving away my pets. Sorry.
No.
That's who's doing that? Nobody. Nobody's doing that.
No. This is over in Denmark. It says the AUBURN Zoo said it is trying to mimic the natural food chain of the animals housed there for the sake of both animal welfare and professional integrity, and offers assurances the pets will be gently euthanized by trained staff. I don't think that's something that I would like to take part in.
Neither would I. But great job as always, Calvin, as we kind of butt up here against the 4 o'clock hour. Hat tip to you, clap on the wildest wacky stories from across the globe. Appreciate your services this weekend. Be free to tune in, on social media with Calvin as he highlights the high school football happenings across the area this week. I'll be back with you tomorrow here on Throwback Thursday. I'm looking forward to that with Maurice Patton to continue our SEC previews as well and do a little coach's corner as the high school football season starts tomorrow, Calvin. So it's underway. So appreciate you guys hanging with us. Have a good rest of your evening here in the Mid-State.